Hello, and welcome to episode 23 of the Motivational Millennial Podcast. Today we are speaking with Peta Kelly, who began a movement a few years ago as a real advocate for millennials and the power that they have, the authenticity that they bring, and really has begun a narrative around creating a new world. And it was a really great conversation with her. She has such authenticity and realness and very spiritual as well. And I just imagine her dancing around barefoot and being all happy and excited and also super wise. So stay tuned for the after show afterwards as well when we discuss our biggest takeaways.
Here we go.
Hello, welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
Our motivational millennial guest today is Peta Kelly. PK is a millennial for millennials and a homie for the homies. The invitation on her website couldn't be clearer. She says, "I've built this space for you, for us, and for all the beautiful, aspiring, badass souls of our generation. Young change makers who want to lead, live, earn, and give in very big and unconventional ways." PK encourages authenticity, creativity, and conscious game changers through the New Way live events, her barefoot speeches, the Spirit Jeaniius, and more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So we'd love to hear in your own words, more about what you're up to and why you're passionate about it.
Yeah, well, it's a really good time for you to ask me that because I've just finally slowed down enough to actually know what's going on in my life, which is I think for millennials, it's not very common because we're also driven, we're also hungry, we're also responsible for creating big change. And I know for me, it's only been in the last month that I've actually slowed down and got, like, wow, my life moves really fast.
Yeah.
So right now, my number one focus is serving Gen Y, of course, and the way that that's manifesting is through events and programs. And most upcoming is a big event in Sydney called the New Way Live. So I'm really focusing on serving people through really fun, playful experiences and making personal development not so serious all the time because. For me, my journey, and I'm sure we'll probably get to that, but as a leader and as someone who's felt a big responsibility as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a daughter, as a mother in the future, and as a member of Team Earth, it is such a big responsibility that we have. We're here in such a big, important time, and I think that a lot of us, with our drive, and there's such a masculine energy with it that I really did at one point probably forget to play. And I still achieved a lot of really amazing things. I was kicking big goals and everything like that. But now this year, I've very much been called to not just teach our generation the new way, how to live, lead, earn, and give, conscious business, conscious leadership, the new way to do everything and how we're going to really change the game. But I've really been called to teach our generation to play and to bring more of the feminine energy into our leadership and into our business and into our collaborations and into our work and into our schedules. And that's really been a huge breakthrough for me. So right now I'm just so excited to focus on a little bit less. And like I said, coming up with this big event we're having in Sydney, and I'm so freaking excited when our generation comes together as a team. That's what I'm building. And I've transitioned from not just building a personal brand, because I feel like a personal brand, that while they're great and important because you want to relate to people, what I'm really focusing on building now is a legacy and something that is a team. And that's what Jeaniius is the team of millennials, the team of conscious game changers of all ages who are coming together to create beautiful things for our planet and fueled by something which is far bigger than our intellect. And so that's what I'm building now. I'm moving from being Peta Kelly the person to Peta Kelly, the humble servant of this movement, which is so beautiful, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it.
I love that incredible vision and just the scope and the scale of it. I'm curious, when you're talking about the new way, and I know you've also referred to the new normal, can you talk a little bit about how that vision arrived for you and how it's been manifesting?
Yeah, the new way essentially is been manifesting for probably about 4 years. So when I was 22, 23, I was starting my PhD. So I just done about 6 years at university. I did an undergrad degree. I did a postgrad master's degree. I published a thesis, and I really thought that was the way to go. And I absolutely adored my time at university. I would never change it for a thing. And I'm always very mindful to say that, because I think sometimes as entrepreneurs we can go a little bit the other way. But I loved my time in the research labs and at school. And I was doing science, exercise and health science, and bioenergetics, which is very different to what I'm doing now. But I loved it, and I just loved it. But I got to the point in my PhD where, I got a scholarship. That was my dream and my goal. Be a doctor by the time you're 25. That was my goal, and I was very much on track to do it. And I knew I could do anything, but what I realized one day was that I knew I could do anything, but I wasn't really letting myself do anything. I was doing what I thought I needed to do. And I left my PhD, not with any haste, but just with this call that was like, Peter, you don't really feel as full and free as you need to feel. And it's just that question that I think we avoid asking ourselves, like, are we happy? When you've just got a PhD scholarship and you feel like you're kicking butt and you're making your mom proud and everything, that's a really hard question to ask. Are you happy? And the answer is actually no, especially when you have so much to be grateful for. Sometimes you feel like it's actually selfish to say no. It's like, well, why am I not happy? I have a PhD scholarship. So it really takes balls. And I finally found those balls, and I decided that, I didn't feel full and didn't feel free. So I took the leap, and I just trusted the universe. I had no freaking idea what I was going to do. I had no business background in my family. I had a single mom of four who worked very hard to raise four children. So I knew how to work, and I knew how to grind, and I knew how to go after what I needed. I just knew how to get done, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I stumbled into network marketing at a very young age. And that was just such a beautiful, amazing platform for me to learn so much, not just to build a really incredible wealth for myself and my family, but also to learn how to build a team, to learn how to cast a vision, to learn how to work with people, to learn how to discipline my own time, to learn how to create a life which necessarily wasn't being created by anyone else around me, to learn how to go first, to learn how to live into my imagination more than what was going around me in reality, and learn how to handle money, learn how to respect money, learn how to earn money, learn how to change my money story, learn how to give more than most people were earning, really just change the scope of everything I'd known to be true. And that's what I started to learn. And since then, I have transitioned out of network marketing, because what network marketing, and when I say that, I don't mean I've left it. I still nurture and nourish my team, of course, because you don't leave something you've built. But I mean, I've moved on to following where my highest excitement is leading me now. And that's really what network marketing allowed me to do, was to follow my highest excitement without worrying about resources and without worrying about time, and with complete emotional, spiritual, financial, and personal freedom to do that. And that's why I honor that network marketing phase so beautifully, because it really was such a meaningful platform and time in my life, and one that, like I said, I still very much nurture. But over these times, as I started to build this very free life, I started to notice that my way wasn't normal. And I started to notice that there was a lot of people who really did agree with how I was living and what I thought about the world. And it wasn't just me. And at times it very much felt like it was, because I grew up in the most isolated city in the world, in Perth. And so I started to really, without even knowing it, put together what I felt was the new way. What did I feel that? And I found myself really defending and protecting millennials like every single day. When people say, oh, they're so lazy, they're always on their phone, they're so selfish. I knew in my soul that wasn't the case, because I am one. And I know that millennials aren't selfish. They're just not tolerant to the stories that we get fed. And we're not tolerant to the lifestyle and the life and the beliefs that our previous generations gave to us. While we're very respectful and while we honor everything that was delivered to us essentially and that we took on, like, it doesn't vibe with us. We were born differently. We were born with different DNA. We were born with different desires, and we were born equipped differently because we had to be. So I found myself starting to defend our generation over and over again. No, you don't understand us, rah, rah. And then it was just interesting because I started to really get passionate about this new way. And I felt like it was my responsibility to not just live it, but to define it so that I could teach it and I can share it and I could get everybody on the same page, essentially, like, hey guys, this is the new way. Like, and something that could not just be like my way, but more like an ongoing discussion. Like, guys, what do we need to do differently? So that's why Jeaniius is very much a team huddle. It's always about team because I don't believe in rock stars in this day and age. It's just, yeah. So that's the new way. And the new way, it always for me was about bridging the gap between spirituality and consciousness as the first pillar, which is living. The second one is leadership, which is courageously leading. The third one is money and creatively earning and entrepreneurship and how to build businesses in a new way so that we can actually give more to the planet than we're taking. And finally, giving. How can we consciously give so that we are putting this all together in one model? And that's what the new way is. And it's going to evolve by the time our children are here. But we need to have something that we're going by right now.
What possibilities have you seen come into the lives of millennials that you have worked with and introduced the new way to and built the new way with?
The thing that I'm the biggest about now is alignment. So when I was in network marketing, obviously I was really teaching people to live physically free and financially free. So I was teaching them to build a residual income for themselves through service and living a life where they were really in control of what they did with their time. So that was that sort of freedom. But as I evolved, I realized that actually wasn't the most important freedom. The most important freedom was alignment and literally feeling so free in your soul that it's not only dependent on what you have around you. And that's what I learned as somebody who, earned millions and, created this life and was flying on planes everywhere. I still at times felt like a prisoner to my own habits and to my own expectations of myself. And so what I really teach people now is that your alignment is everything, and to create a schedule, which doesn't necessarily have to be 16, 17 hours a day like the traditional entrepreneurial hustle teaches us, and to say no more than you say yes, and to sleep and to literally craft this life where it's like your life feels beautiful when your head hits the pillow each night. And it's not just about what it looks like on paper, because often what it looks like on paper is really not what's going on in the inside at all. Yeah, it's very much about teaching people every spectrum of it, to live freely where your spirituality doesn't become like obedience training, and to lead in a way that is so aligned and so authentic that it feels good, and to earn in a way that is good for the planet, good for the people, but is very freeing and abundant for you, and also to give in a way that lights you up. So there's so many aspects there, but I think the number one thing the people I mentor are saying to me now is just how free they really feel beyond the message of financial freedom, beyond the message of physical freedom, but the real freedom that very few get to. And that's freedom to stop in the middle of the day and be like, you know what, my to-do list is actually bullshit, and I need to go and have some fun. And it's crazy that I'm talking like this, because if you had interviewed me a year ago, it maybe would have been very much more about the hustle. That's how fast we're all evolving. But I think as well, my entrepreneurs are teaching me permission to create models that don't exist. If I can answer all in one question, it's going somewhere new that most people on earth have never been to.
What I'm finding so inspiring, as you've been talking this whole time, is your ability to honor, first of all, like you said, something that's creating something new. But I've seen over and over again, you mention ways of living that have been presented to us traditionally as contrary. So at the beginning, you were talking about working really hard, but also now playing, the ability to work really hard, but also enjoy that. And you talk about being able to earn money, but also being able to serve, or serving and also earning money. What I'm hearing is so at the core of who you are is doing something new, doing something different, and being totally comfortable and excited about pushing new paradigms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, moving somewhere that most people haven't been, like, and it all comes back to the fact that we don't need to accept that there is like a barrier to the level of joy and abundance and happiness and freedom that we're meant to feel. But we also want to understand that the only way that we're going to get there is through our own alignment. So it really is this new way to have everything we want, is not actually having everything we think we want. It's like this, it's this alignment. It's like your head hits the pillow each night and you're like, I feel so good about my day and I don't need anybody else to understand why. It's a lot more humble, you know what I mean? Because it's not about having this on your Instagram bio or whatever. It's about designing our life around what feels good to us. And I think that the previous generations haven't been able to do that, and not to their own default, but because that was their role. Their role was to go and overachieve and everything like that. But our generation, while we are very much overachievers, absolutely I think that what we're going to move into as we invite the next generation in is that it's a more humble way to feel successful. And I call it Success 2.0. It's like, it's just not the accolades anymore.
I'm curious, you mentioned if we had asked you a year ago, you'd be really focused on the hustle, and now you're much more into play. Was there a defining moment that helped shift or make that realization for you?
Yes and no. So for me, I've always been very much in my masculine energy. Like I said, I was raised by a single mom who had to be our mom and our dad. So I saw her have to just get done, essentially. And so I've very much been stuck on that mode. And my mom's my superhero. So I've always just wanted to be like her. So I've been stuck on that mode my whole life. And because, we don't have children, so I feel like, well, what else am I going to do with my time but just get done? So I very much was just stuck there. I have so many downloads come to me, so many ideas. So I love teaching. I love creating things. I have endless energy for what I love. So I suppose that just had me stuck on this mode. And then as time progressed, it really was like, I used to burn out a little bit. I'd had 2 modes, full out and passed out. They were like my 2 modes, full out and burned out. It was like I was at 100%, I was 0, and there was no in between. Like really, my rhythm was good. I've always slept. And I think that's so important for people to know that, guys, we just need to sleep. And I don't like to glorify when we don't sleep. I love to sleep. But, there was still finding my own rhythm. Like Robin Sharma has this big thing about the 5 a.m. club and mind over mattress. And that never felt good to my adrenal glands, but I suppose my adrenal glands had to tell me that. So, I just started to really, I think over time, I started to realize what is my rhythm, and do I need to be in a rush to get everything done? Is everything a rush all the time? And it really has been in the last couple of months where the defining moment has just been day by day. My soul has very much pulled me towards more the feminine, and not being feminine female, but feminine, the slow, more flowing, more present part of my life. And there's been a few spiritual ceremonies which have really aided in that too. There's a lot of downloads and a lot of messages and insights come to me that my role is very much about not leading our generation into burnout, but leading our generation into a new bliss and a new freedom while still being very productive and efficient. It's all just been the process of learning. You're very responsible when you're teaching people all the time. It's like, I don't want them to feel like they need to move at my pace. So you start to be more self-aware, and therefore I've just started to monitor my rhythm and arrive at something which feels good. So I don't teach people to copy my rhythm. I teach them to find their own, and not at all dependent on what other people are saying, like including Robin Sharma. Like, he's a great man, but I freaking hate the 5 a.m. club, and I don't like mind over mattress. Like, it doesn't, while it used to work for me, my adrenal glands like to sleep till 6:30, and I'm not going to bust them up, because of this, what someone else said works for them. And that's what I'm teaching people. It's about our own rhythm and our own alignment. And I think as well, in full transparency, having children is one of my highest excitements. And I know that in order to do that, I do need to be more in my feminine. So that's played a part in my role as well, as slowing down and realizing it's just the seasons of life,
I'm curious, you talked some about that spiritual journey. Is that in any way related to Jeaniius? I'd be interested if you talked a little bit more about Jeaniius.
Yeah, so my spiritual journeys, I do ceremonies, and I like to very much prioritize my spiritual journey with my soul and with the divine, God, the universe, whatever it is for everybody. But Jeaniius is a spirit. And that's how I teach new business now, is that when we're building something as conscious entrepreneurs, we're working for a vision. And what I've known to be true is that who I'm working for, Jeaniius, is a spirit. Like, she's a very real entity, and she can communicate with me and she can guide me. And she's like my soul sidekick. And, again, like a couple of years ago, I would have just thought it was a vision or something like that. But now I've learned that I think many of us have spirits that are trying to be born through us in the form of ideas. Elizabeth Gilbert talks about ideas in the same way, that they're entities and they want to be born, and they're choosing us. So for me, my entrepreneurial journey really has become a lot more meaningful now that I identify that I'm not just working for this random vision that came into my head. I'm working for a spirit who's very real, and wants to look a certain way and speak a certain way. And so my spiritual journey in terms of entrepreneurship has been that I work for a chief entity now. And I may be the CEO, but I have a chief entity who overrides everything that I want to say. She's the boss, and that's how I believe, is that we're working for something so much bigger, but you can actually have a relationship with what is so much bigger. And that makes it a lot easier to make decisions. It makes it a lot easier to write copy. It makes it a lot easier to design a logo because you can see exactly what it looks like and you know to trust it.
And I heard you in one of your keynote speeches speak eloquently too about a parallel to this in the professional realm, which is this idea of entrepreneurs working for themselves. And you said, you're not working for yourself, you're working for your business. And I thought that was a really great distinction, because when you're working for yourself, you can set your sights too small. You can not fulfill the potential of that vision, of that idea, of that spirit, of what you're trying to create in the world. In some ways, because I think we don't give ourselves enough credit and enough power. And so I think it's really coming from a place of love. It's not, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it does not seem like scolding, like saying, you need to like go get on the grind like nonstop and just run yourself over. But it's like, no, in the pursuit of this vision, it's a higher calling, and it's a more motivating factor because it's not just about you, right? It's about making it real in the world.
Yeah, that's so true. And, if we work for ourselves, we get stale because it just doesn't make sense to work for ourselves. You know what I mean? Like we will get stale. It's just so much more exciting to work for something that is bigger than us. And it's a lot easier to be disciplined with your hours and stuff like that. And when you're working for something that is bigger. And so I love that you recognize that.
Yeah, it also feels like a partnership, so that there's not necessarily the isolation that can come with it, but it's like I'm really working with this spirit that is here to support me, and I don't have to come up with all of the ideas myself. I don't know, it just feels very wholesome.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful thing. It's like I even write emails to people and I say, hey, you know what, like even my event coming up, I had to email someone and say, Jeaniius has guided me and she said she doesn't want to have the speaker. Like she wants me to bring up people who don't usually speak. And she's very specific about that. So when I'm communicating to people about why I'm changing the agenda, it's very easy for me because I say, well, Jeaniius is very specific with what she wants for this vision. So this is what I need to do. And I find it a lot easier because to me, what Peta wants and what Jeaniius wants are not always the same thing. And that actually makes it easier for me. I don't feel like I am the bad guy if I have to say to someone, hey, change your plans. This is what I want. And sometimes I let her write emails for me. And I actually say to my team, and they know now, say, hey, this is Jeaniius speaking. And then I can just say whatever. And it's like, it's not actually from me. And I think that may sound crazy to some people, but, but it's like, I don't have anyone in my team who's not on board that. You know what I mean? I don't want anyone on my team who's going to look at me weird during a meeting if I'm going to say, hey, Jeaniius gave me this download last night. They're all on board. And they're like, okay, cool. No, we get it. So, and all the entrepreneurs that I teach, like we all talk about it. They're all like, this is my chief entity. And like our chief entities are all like, one of my best friends, she's the world's first ever dessert hummus company. And we speak about it all the time, like hers is called Delighted By, and she's very specific about what Delighted By wants. And Delighted By is, she just sends me a text and she's like, Delighted By is just on fire right now. It's so real for her. And the entrepreneurs that I teach too, like they have such a beautiful relationship with their business. They know their name and their essence, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's just this conversation rather than just this freaking, sometimes what seems to be a grind. It's actually something very beautiful.
Well, it's a great way, too, to help people get out of their own way. I think what you're describing when you say it's just easy to say this is what Jeaniius wants, this is what the vision is. In some way, it's the purest form of your intuition, which is really beautiful as well, because I know so often I vacillate between that second guessing myself, is this the right thing? That fear that inevitably comes up when you're trying to do something meaningful. And then the full on, I just have to go at this as hard as possible. Like you're saying, like the masculine energy of just sheer, output. And somewhere in between there is that listening to yourself and that guidance. And so I love that for you, because it's so tangible as this entity, I think it really helps clarify your vision in a beautiful way.
Yeah, that's so true. It is like Steve Jobs and Apple. Like, I mean, I have such a spiritual connection with him. I love him, and I feel like I'm always trying to protect him because people just misunderstood him. But I know that, Apple was his chief entity, and he had to do what he had to do to make sure that it was never compromised. And now look how grateful the world is that Steve Jobs didn't compromise on Apple, and yet they all gave him so much shit for he was this sort of man and this sort of man and this sort of man. I just refuse to watch that new movie because I'm just like, just leave him alone. Like, Apple was his chief entity, and like Elon Musk, Tesla is his. I don't know if Elon Musk would have wanted to give the patents to his cars away, but he did because that was the vision of Tesla. Like Nikola Tesla was incredibly generous, and that's what he wanted. So whether Elon wanted it or not, too bad, because he's working for something bigger than Elon.
So since you've been on this path, what's been the biggest challenge that you've faced, and how have you overcome it?
So many challenges. Oh my God. And I love talking about them because it's like my favorite thing to talk about to my people that I mentor, because it's just everything. So many. I think one of them was my pace. My pace was killing me before. I'd moved too fast. It was just really hard to have clarity and simplicity. And that becomes quite painful. It's like you're almost always in a state of overwhelm. That was a challenge that it was very embedded in my DNA to move like that. So it was a personal challenge of having to really value slowing down. And like I said, it's only been in the last couple of months that I've actually wanted to. And my husband's looked at me and he's like, I cannot believe that you were doing Pilates today instead of like a 60-minute high-intensity work. But that was the biggest challenge. I craved simplicity. I craved clarity. I just craved it. And I didn't know how to give it to myself. And it didn't matter who I hired and who I brought on. If I didn't have it, no one could bring it to me. Because I started with $500 a week. That was my government scholarship. And then I built my income up really quite well from scratch. So because I am building my startup now with my own personal income, I sometimes tried to cover up my lack of clarity with adding more expenses. Like, oh, I'll just invest in this, I'll invest in this. And it never worked. And I actually had to learn the hard way. This is what entrepreneurship is all about. But I learned the hard way that I had to be so clear in my soul and with my relationship with Jeaniius and in me. Otherwise, no hire, no team, nothing was going to help me get clear and simple. And so recently I brought my team to probably the leanest it's ever been, even though we have the biggest tribe we've ever had. And it feels so great. And, I've had to have some bad investments to learn, very expensive lessons, heartbreaking, but, it's all part of the game. And I'm grateful because now I get to teach other people. But so I've had to learn. Just very recently, I had a very big investment, which was it just didn't work out. An investment for someone to come in and do some work for me just didn't work out. And no hard feelings, but a tough pill to swallow when you're in a startup phase. And so I've very much learned that less is more, that essentialism is always the way. I've learned to have an incredible respect for money. And even though I am someone who has a very abundant mindset, I'm now very, very careful with money, even though I have an abundant mindset. So I've learned to balance the two, to still be very abundant, very generous, very comfortable, very happy, very free with money, but very respectful of it as an energy. And that makes me sound like I spent a lot. I don't. But what I'm saying is that it's like sometimes you can be less resourceful to cover up the fact that you need to be more resourceful. So those are all lessons that I've learned, which have been amazing. I feel like I'm probably speaking to you now in the greatest clarity I've had in a couple of years. I have scratched so many projects. I am so comfortable with my pace now. I am so trusting in the process, and I'm the leanest in terms of my company that we've ever been in, while being the most supportive of my tribe. So I think that all those lessons have been so good, and I love them. And while I don't want to have to go through any of them again, I love that I can share them with all the people that I teach. And I think another huge one is just really learning to understand that we all have to live to our highest values and like what everybody else is doing, essentially, in terms of trying to influence that. And it can come off as selfish, but it's everything. Like, for us to impact the world, our light needs to be on. And our light needs to be on not just for the cameras and not just when we're on a podcast, but when our head hits the pillow each night. So I've started to learn that I don't actually care about what some other people in my field care about, like getting really big. You know what I mean? And that's with absolutely no judgment. But for me, I want to feel good rather than just look good. You know what I mean? Like it's all about feeling good for me. And so it takes some time for you to realize what do I really want and what does everybody else want? Where are they different? And how can I move into more alignment by realizing that, hey, you know, I don't necessarily want to have big brand exposure. I would rather fly less. I would rather spend more time at home. I would rather have more space in my day. I would rather be able to spend more time in Australia. So it's about being, because you can get very caught up when you're in this field, right? You've got to write a book. It has to be a New York Times bestseller. You've got to speak on this stage and this stage and this stage. And I'm so grateful that I have freed myself now in my 20s of the need to chase my tail for something that isn't actually one of my highest values. I've learned that through chasing my tail a little bit, you know? Which is tough.
Yeah, there are so many of those shoulds, and it's so easy, like you said, even when you're in a field like personal development where you're really trying to bring your vision to life, to get caught up in, and therefore the vision should look like Tony Robbins or whoever. So something you just said, you know, you said have the lights on. I know lights on Gen Y has been one of the things you've talked about, and in addition to all the wonderful things you've shared so far, is there any other advice that you would give to other millennials and Gen Y who are on this journey towards fulfillment and success?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody needs to know that they have like a zone of genius that is a place where you can live that most people think is too good to be true. And when I say genius, what genius means is she is the spiritual genius, not the intellectual genius. So she is that spirit that flows through all of us so that we can do what excites us the most and do what people call it maybe as a passion or a genius. But she is like the new way to define that, you know, and everybody has it in a place where they are so clear and so sure and so happy to just f*** up and so, you know, just so free in their creativity and so free in their expression and so free in their alignment. And I think that people just sometimes need to know that that's possible for them and that it isn't normal and it isn't expected of them to have to put up with and tolerate something that feels less than their highest excitement. And I think that another important part of that is while we are striving for this new place to live in this new zone of bliss, we need to remember that we are here as a human. And that's for a reason, because we're meant to feel all of the emotions. We're meant to be grounded. We're meant to be very high and we're meant to still be very low. But the whole living in your zone of genius means that you're okay regardless of all of it. You can be low, you can be high, you can be just in between, but you can be so trusting in everything and so trusting in yourself and so trusting in your ability to come back to alignment. And I think that human, like you probably see me hashtag human as is like my new favorite thing to talk about because that's what we are. We don't have to be anything we're not. We don't have to be this transcendent master of the universe. We're here to be humans. And while we're all striving to change the game and to change our own game, I think it's important to realize that we sort of have this free pass to mess up. And we have a free pass to learn. And we have a free pass to cry. And we have a free pass to doubt ourselves and a free pass to just scrap the whole day and sit in bed if we want to because we're humans. And I think that that's so important, especially for our generation, to know that I know you're all driven. I know you all feel a huge responsibility for the world, but we're not here to change the whole world. We're here to change ours first. And that firstly comes with recognizing that we're human and that when we can take that with us and realize that we can live in our zone of genius, then that's the magic force right there.
What would you say to someone who is searching and striving for that zone of genius, but really feeling like their immediate reality is in a place of scarcity? So I know it can be really hard sometimes for people feeling like, man, I'm just scraping by, you know, paycheck to paycheck. How do I shift my, say, career or financial reality to match more of what I know is possible? I think sometimes making that leap can feel really daunting for people.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I totally get it. When I left my PhD, it was so daunting. But you get to a point where you're like, what is more daunting? Leaping and trusting the universe or staying where I am? And I think that's the first question that you need to ask. And I think, you know, I have this model. It's called the anatomy of your genius. And I think what's so important for people to begin with is to start to listen and to start to notice clues of where their highest excitements are. And there's a whole process I take people through, but just for the purpose of this, it's just very much like notice where you are, what you're doing when you feel most alive. Notice what you're doing when you're feeling the most you. Notice what you're doing when you're the most excited. What is it that you can't stop thinking about or talking about? And if it's starting to ask these questions really directly to our soul, that we start to realize where may be our next step. And the excitement of that next step, when we can find it, is always going to be bigger than how scary it is. So that's what I like to teach people, is to find the excitement, because then the leap doesn't seem so scary anymore, because the excitement will drown out the fear of the leap. And I think that that's the state that we want to be in, because that's where courage comes, when we have some excitement. You know what I mean? I think we very much underestimate that changing our state is just so important. So I think that's to put it very simply, a good place to start.
So shifting a little bit more into what motivates you, you've spoken a couple of times about the importance of feeling fulfilled and the place that you're in when you put your head on the pillow at night. And so I'm wondering, when you wake up in the morning, what do you do? What does your routine look like that allows you to set up your day in a way that's going to be the most fulfilling?
So I wake up and I just have a rule that I don't check my phone. Our phones can be just so detrimental sometimes. That's just my rule, is I don't check my phone until I've done my spirit routine. And my spirit routine is very constant. It's very important to me because my brain moves so fast. I can very easily get distracted, and I'm very, very ADD. So for me, I need to just get grounded and honor life. And so I wake up, and the first things I say are, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for meeting my every need, and thank you for giving me all the resources I need to do what I'm called to do. And then just three gratitudes. Firstly, just to honor the fact that we're here and all our needs are met. I'm a lot more fluid with my spirit routine now, again, because the feminine in me has allowed that. Previously, I would have told you, well, then I go up my stairs and I sit in my meditation room. So what I do is I wake up and I do my food, my adaptogens and my probiotics and all that stuff, which is super important. It's literally like clockwork. And then if my husband is going to work out with me, we will go for a hike or a walk or a ride or something like that. And then I will come back to meditate. If he's going to do his own thing, I will go and meditate first. And my meditation in the morning is I am very much more open to whatever feels right on the time. I used to just make myself sit. I sometimes dance and just put music on and just literally feel my body and be present in my body, which is something that I'm learning to do from someone who was moving so fast. I was very much working out and sometimes not even being in my body when I was working out. So I move and I touch my body and I feel my body, and I give thanks all the time. I mean, sometimes I would put my head on the floor and I would just say, thank you. And so my head is below my heart, so I can't start thinking a million miles an hour like I usually do. And then I will sometimes write. I soul journal. So I just write in a direct relationship with my soul and just talk to her. Just, what's cool today? What's fresh today? What should we talk about? If I have something specific to ask, I will then sit in meditation. Sometimes I'll have an audio on. So sometimes I'll have just like some high vibration music or a specific audio that really brings me into a nice state. It really depends on what I'm feeling. And I think that's so important with the spirit routine, whatever it is that it feels good. Then I like to touch the floor with my feet. I like to touch the earth with my feet. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but I really like to. When I was living in Australia, my morning routine involved the beach, but now I am in the desert for most of the year. It's grass or mountains. So I am a little bit more flex there, but every morning there's a spirit routine. Every morning there is a meditation. Every morning there is being present in my body. Every morning there is thanking the divine source, God, universe. Every morning there is talking to my soul and just checking in. Every morning there is some sort of gratitude for Mother Nature. And I've started as well in this whole is every time I eat my food, and it sounds so crazy that we don't do this, but I mean, we're humans, so we don't. Sometimes we just shove food down our throat, and I know I have most of my life, is to stop and literally be so present with every meal that I thank the farmers and I thank the people who package this vegan sauce and the people who deliver the vegetables to the supermarket. And I just thank the whole process of this food getting to my plate. And I thank it in my cells, I thank it in my body, and it's just everything now I'm trying to be a lot more present. But coming back to your question, what do I do every day? my spirit routine, but I'm a lot more flex with it. I move my body every single day. Every single day without fail, I move my body, and I read every single day as well. And I try and keep some space for nothing. Sometimes easy, sometimes not so easy, but I'm working on that one.
And speaking of reading, is there a book that's changed your life that you would want to share with our audience?
So many. So Essentialism is really good for now. That is one that's recent for me. Whatever Arises, love that, by Matt Kahn. The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Wayne Dyer. I'm just looking at my bookshelf now. There is literally like 400 books looking at me right now. So I'm like, how many? But those three just came to my soul. Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert. So those four are great to begin with. But Essentialism, Whatever Arises, love that. And now I'm reading a lot of David Dider books, like feminine and masculine energy books.
As we're closing out here, would you mind telling the audience how they can find out more about you and your work?
Yeah. So if you just go to petakelly.com, petakelly.com is getting updated soon. So, but there's also my Facebook and my Instagram is probably where there's so much action there. So Facebook Lives and things like that. I love just jumping on sporadically. So my Facebook and my Instagram, which I think are just Peta Kelly for Facebook and Peta Jean _ for Instagram.
Perfect. Well, we've been enjoying your videos, so we definitely recommend people check them out. Peta, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. It was just so fun. Nothing I love talking about more.
Perfect. Thank you.
The Motivational Millennial podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Coaching Services. We help you find clarity and confidence so you can take action toward living your dream life. To learn more about one-on-one personalized support from someone who believes you have a path to fulfillment and wants to help you uncover it, visit www.motivationalmillennial.com/coaching. So welcome to the after show for our episode and conversation with Peta Kelly. That was such a great conversation. She has some really amazing and unique, beautiful energy about her, doesn't she?
She does, and some incredible vision, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Inspirational.
Yeah, very much so. One of the things that I came away with from that conversation is when she was talking about her morning routine, she called it her spirit routine. And I love that because it totally reminds me of cheerleaders, like about having tons of spirit. Like school spirit, and like you have your spirit routine, and it just sounds like really fun and I know full of joy and encouragement. But I also really love it because it just calling it that feels to me, it gives it some focus and like a whole new different level of depth to it. I know in my experience that even when I had much less flexible of a morning routine, meaning, now my mornings are a little bit more flexible than when, I was working for a nonprofit organization, my previous job. Even then, I noticed a huge difference between mornings that I just got up and rolled out of bed and got in the shower and went to work versus mornings that I got up and gave myself some extra time to go for a walk, do some journaling. I mean, most of the time I journaled every single day. I don't do that as much as I used to, but it was a huge difference in terms of just like my overall well-being, like my overall physical and mental well-being. And I noticed that now my spirit routine, when I call it spirit routine, it makes me want to make it even grander. It actually makes me want to, invest in it a little bit more. Right now, I get up and I go for a walk and I do some meditation, but, it's inspiring. It makes me want to do even more. I want to talk to my soul every day, like Peta talks to her soul. I thought that was really cool. So for me, it was just being inspired again about the importance of having a wholesome and connecting morning routine.
Yeah, I think your point about spirit routine is also worth highlighting in the sense that what you name things really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Because you could call exercising having to go to the gym, or you could call it my hour of power or whatever, whatever thing it is that makes you feel amped up about whatever it is in life. I need to go work on my album versus it's time to lay down some hot tracks in the studio. It's just, you get a totally different feeling, and that's the power of language to elicit that feeling. So no, it was partially in jest, but I think having a spirit routine sounds really exciting.
No, it does. Like, legitimately, to me, it does. And the other thing that we can kind of underestimate is what we do with our bodies, or like the space that we're in. I think in terms of changing how we view the activity of something. Like, I can feel so much more excited about answering tons of emails and stuff if I go to the cafe and I have the little cafe and I'm in there with all the people that are working on their computers and there's all this really cool energy, versus if I just am in my own space, which I love my space, but I like to change it up a little bit, because then I feel like, oh, this is an adventure and I get to go and have some coffee and answer all these emails, rather than being like, oh man, I have to answer all these emails. And so, I don't know, it kind of made me think of that. Anyway, that's what came up when you said that. So, I want to hear about what your insights were. What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I definitely related to her struggles with the PhD, as I, too, had a significant portion of doing the doctorate where I felt that the intellectual was significantly disconnected from the reality. And I have a song, I haven't released it on any album, and I'm not sure if it's going to be released, but the title was something like "A theorist is one letter away from a terrorist" or something.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't think, I think I was probably being a little hyperbolic, obviously. I don't even remember really what the thrust was of the song, but I related to what she said too about the guilt of not feeling happy when you've been handed an incredible opportunity. Because similar to her, I just remember thinking, here I am, I have a scholarship to write a PhD about something I really love and care about. It's hip hop, it's global youth culture, it's things that are really important and exciting and fun. And just sitting there staring at the Word document thinking, how am I going to write this next word? I just feel so unhappy. And it was really a struggle through it. And looking back on it, it's ironic to me that I still face those same struggles. It's not like they ever go away as you age, but just how much more aware I feel of how I work now. And I think what I know now, in part because of some of the things, Ivy, you've introduced me to, Eckhart Tolle and some other things, where just specifically Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, and just realizing that you can't always solve these mental blocks by trying to do more mental gymnastics. Sometimes it's about what you were saying earlier, the state you're in. It's about your physical state. What's your environment? How are you feeling? Because you can sit there and try to debate and negotiate your mind to get it to do what it wants all the time, but more often than not, it's about the physical state you're in. If you just break it and give yourself a minute, 5 minutes, whatever it is, to reset your state in one that's more powerful and one that's more present and engaged, then you're not fighting the whole way. I feel like my entire intellectual journey was all about how hard can I push myself and how hard can I fight for this thing. And that doesn't work as well outside of an academic environment, at least for me. I work much better when I get myself in the zone and then go, versus trying to strategize myself about all the right things I need to do and then try to get the work done.
I think it's really interesting that when you started talking about the unhappiness in the PhD, that it was because it was something that you really wanted to be doing and that you were really excited about it and really passionate about it, but there was some kind of mental block that was keeping you from pursuing it, and that's where the unhappiness was coming from. And I think that the other perspective that Peta is talking about, or was talking about, is that feeling of having this opportunity, or sometimes it's like this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I have this really great career. Oh my gosh, I have this really great house, or, all of these things when you look around that other people tell you should feel really grateful for, and other people tell you should feel really happy about. And you may be like, wow, I'm actually really grateful that these things are this way, but there's some discontent or there is some lack of fulfillment and you're like wanting more or something different. And the struggle that can happen there with feeling like it's okay to want something more and it's okay to want something different, even if what you have is objectively or, in some ways subjectively, like really wonderful. Because from the outside perspective, people might think that that's really great, but inside you're not so happy, right? And so it takes a lot of bravery to look around and say, no, this isn't exactly really what I want to be doing, even though it's a great opportunity, or even though I have this crazy career happening right now, it's actually like not the path that I want. And it takes a lot of courage to step away from that and to really look at what are my values and what makes me really happy, even if it's different than what society tells you it should be, and even if it's different than what you thought it should be. Like, that's amazing, and that takes a lot of bravery and courage.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the great challenges of growing up, is looking at the things that we believe and we think we want because we've been told to want them. And then you start to actually ask yourself, wait, is this what I really want? Is this what I really like? Is this what I really want to do with my life? Is this what really makes me happy? And so there's a certain amount of awareness and often a sense of loss sometimes when you look at something that you think you really want or thought you should want your entire life, and then suddenly you realize, oh, actually, that's not what I really want. And I think that can come with some of the guilt too, is not just guilt about other people's expectations, but your own expectations for yourself.
Yeah, and like a little bit of disappointment. There might be a little bit of, dang, I wish I'd known that earlier. Like regret, like a sense of regret as well. And that's what, so it speaks so much to Peta's bravery and her whole story, because she's like, okay, I'm gonna not do this. I'm gonna start this whole other path. And that's so much about what she encourages. And actually there was a section of her piece that I was gonna talk about in the after show, but I ended up actually writing a blog post about it. And it's about recovering from the heartbreak that can happen when you start pursuing your dreams and your passion, and how there will likely be setbacks and things that you have to overcome. And sometimes when you've put yourself out there, you're like, okay, I really found this thing that I want to do, and I actually really love it, and you're exhilarated and you're passionate and you're excited, and then hit a roadblock. It's like this sense of heartbreak, because by then you have an understanding of what it is that you have to lose because you love it so much. And so check out that blog post if y'all haven't had a chance to check it out, because I dive in a little bit more deeply to that as well.
At motivationalmillennial.com. And there was a bird chirping a few minutes ago when Ivy was talking.
Nature! So
it may have sounded like a fire alarm dying. No worries.
It was just nature.
It was just nature outside the window. So we appreciate you all being part of our environment. That doesn't make any sense. I really try hard on these outros to have a nice, smooth transition.
I think I liked it. Well, I think we're a part of your environment. We're in your ears.
That's right. We're chirping wisdom and randomness. Well, we hope.
And love.
And love. That's right. It's always love. It's not always wisdom. But we try. What can we say? Anyway, thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to our conversation with Peta Kelly. We hope you got as much inspiration from it as we did, talking to her. Just a phenomenal person and really creating quite a powerful movement for millennials. And we hope you will tune in next week on the Motivational Millennial Podcast.
For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis. Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!